The massive success of DC's Absolute Universe has won hearts and proved that audiences are ready for a bold, intense reimagining of iconic characters. These absolute takes are redefining old stories and certain beloved heroes. These versions take familiar heroes and push them into darker, more grounded worlds. And now, other franchises are beginning to follow suit. There's another franchise that's taking this route, and let me tell you, it wasn't something we ever dreamed of. Yup. Dynamite Entertainment is bringing an absolute version of Ben 10 to comic stores. This is the same Ben who can transform into aliens, the same guy we grew up watching, and this kid hero is being reimagined as an absolute take on Ben 10, a darker, grittier interpretation inspired by the same trend that's reshaping superhero stories right now. A new Ben 10 franchise is coming out, and it's going to be extremely dark. We can't wait to read this comic when it drops, but before it releases, let's take a quick look at everything we know about this comic run. It's going to be a good one, so let's get into it. So, what exactly is the 2026 Ben 10 comic? Ben 10 is officially returning to the comics in a fresh new way, and this isn't just a sequel or a reboot. It's a brand new ongoing series published by Dynamite Entertainment, and it's being creatively guided by the original team behind Ben 10, Man of Action. The first issue is simply titled Ben 10 Number 1, and it's written by Joe Casey with artwork by Robert Carey. The comic is set to launch in May 2026, with the first issue dropping on May 6th. So yeah, it's set to release pretty soon, and even though it's supposed to be a darker adaptation of the story, it's still all ages, which means it's for kids and long-term fans alike. So whether you grew up watching Ben transform into Heat Blast after school, or you're just discovering the world now, you're supposed to be able to jump right in, no confusion. The comic will begin with a revamped origin story, and that means we're going back to the beginning. Basically, Ben 10 is being updated for a new generation, which probably means some changes in tone, pacing, and maybe even character designs. And I'm not gonna lie, that makes us really curious as to what changes they'll make. On top of that, the series will focus on short, self-contained story arcs, so you can just pick it up and enjoy a complete adventure. And with Joe Casey leading the writing, we just know that this version of Ben 10 won't just be surface-level action. He's known for bringing a certain depth to his work, and paired with Robert Carey's art, there's real potential here for something visually and narratively engaging. Who's making this thing, and why does that matter? The comic is being made by Man of Action, and if you're a fan of the original Ben 10 cartoon, that name should immediately ring a bell. This is the original creative team behind the cartoon, the people who built this universe from the ground up. And we're talking about all four members: Joe Casey, Joe Kelly, Duncan Rouleau, and Stephen T. Siegel. These guys created the world of Ben 10, and we think it's amazing that they're working on this project. I mean, they created Ben Tennyson, the Omnitrix, and set the tone and humor of the show. Apart from Ben 10, they've also worked on other major projects like Big Hero 6, which shows just how strong their storytelling range really is. While all four members of Man of Action were involved creatively, the first arc is being specifically written by Joe Casey, with interior art by Robert Carey. Joe Casey has worked on titles like Superman and X-Men, and even handled characters like Johnny Quest and Space Ghost. So he knows how to take the established characters and push them into slightly deeper, more experimental territory. This makes us think that this version of Ben 10 won't be a safe, nostalgic retelling. It might lean into a more defined, more intense version of the character. Then there's Robert Carey on art, who has worked on books like James Bond, Jennifer Blood, and Outsiders. That's a mix of action, espionage, and darker tone storytelling, and it hints at the visual style we might be getting here. Casey's writing, paired with Carey's art, makes us feel like this comic might lean slightly more mature in tone, even if it's still technically all ages. When does Ben 10 number 1 actually drop? The new Ben 10 ongoing series officially launches in May, with Ben 10 issue number 1 scheduled to drop on May 6th, 2026. If you've known about this project for a while, you know that early discussions and fan chatter pointed towards a February 2026 release window, and that seemed like the expected timeline, but as more official information started to roll in, that February window shifted, and eventually we got the release date for May. So if you're planning on picking this one up on day 1, that's a date you might want to remember. A May launch basically places Ben 10 number 1 right at the start of the summer comic season, and a lot of outlets are already framing this as part of a bigger summer 2026 push for Ben 10 in comics. It's meant to be an entry point or a fresh start. So, how big is this series supposed to be? We're happy to report that this series isn't going to be a one-off or a mini-series. This is being launched as Ben 10 Volume 1 full ongoing monthly comic run. We like that it's titled Volume 1, so we can hopefully expect a Volume 2 and many more after that. In comics, when something is clearly branded Volume 1, it usually means the publishers are thinking long-term. We already know Ben 10 number 1 drops on May 6th, 2026, but issue number 2 is already scheduled for June 3rd, 2026, and it goes on to show the comic is going to be a long-term commitment. When a publisher locks in the second issue that quickly, it means they're fully committed to a monthly release schedule. It tells us that Dynamite Entertainment and Man of Action aren't treating this like a short-term nostalgia grab, they're treating it like a proper serialized story. It also hints at the possibility that multiple story arcs are already planned out. By the time issue number 1 hits shelves, issue number 2 is ready to go, and there's likely already more in production. That usually means the creative team has mapped out at least the first couple arcs, even if they haven't revealed those storylines publicly yet, and that's exciting, because Ben 10 has always been a concept that thrives on long-term storytelling. What kind of Ben 10 is this? A reboot, a sequel, or something else entirely? This new comic series is being described as an ultimate or absolute version of Ben 10. According to Joe Casey, this is basically the most absolute Ben 10 they can make. In comic books, the ultimate or absolute universes are reinventions of characters we know and are familiar with, but we get to see things happening from the start instead of dealing with all the extended continuity that comics have. Allegedly, Man of Steel is pulling from every version of Ben 10 that's come before. The idea is to take the best elements from across the franchise and reshape them into one clean, modern continuity. According to Casey, the comic might bring back a cool idea, a character, or a concept from past versions and reinterpret it to fit this new version. We're going back to the beginning in this one. You'll still get Ben and the Omnitrix, which is the core premise, but it won't be a frame-by-frame adaptation of the 2005 series. Instead, it's more of a remix. They'll keep what works and update what doesn't. It gives the creators flexibility to tell a tighter, more intentional story without being bound by the old structure. How is Ben's origin changing this time? When we first heard about this project, we wondered if they would be changing Ben's origin or if it would still follow the same premise. At its core, the setup seems to still be the same. We're still following 10-year-old Ben Tennyson, who's on a road trip with Gwen and Grandpa Max when he stumbles upon the Omnitrix, a strange alien device that falls out of the sky near their campsite. While the origin is pretty much the same, this version dials up the scale immediately. In the original Ben 10 pilot, Ben finds the Omnitrix, messes around with it, turns into Heat Blast, and slowly begins to realize what he's dealing with. It felt like the start of a fun, slightly chaotic summer adventure, but in the comic, right from the opening arc, the origin is being reframed as the start of a full sci-fi saga. We're not just dealing with a kid who finds an alien watch, because in this version, there are larger forces already in motion. For one, there's military involvement tied to the Omnitrix event. The government and other organizations are aware that something big has landed on Earth. The story introduces a full-scale alien conflict connected directly to the Omnitrix's arrival. The Omnitrix is a part of something bigger and more dangerous, others are actively after it, and that includes major players like Vilgax, who's expected to be a part of this reworked origin. What characters are confirmed to show up in issue number 1? All right, let's get into the confirmed lineup. First up, of course, we've got Ben himself. He's still the same 10-year-old kid at the center of it all, who's curious, impulsive, and suddenly handed the most powerful device in the universe. Right alongside him, we've got Gwen Tennyson and Max Tennyson. Gwen still seems to carry that smart, grounded energy. She's the one who questions things when Ben rushes in head first. Grandpa Max, meanwhile, looks like he'll once again be the steady, experienced presence. Now let's talk villains, because Vilgax is already confirmed to show up. In the original series, Vilgax was built up gradually as this looming threat. Here, he's going to be brought into the story much earlier, tied directly to the Omnitrix and its arrival. Then, we get to the Omnitrix aliens, and from the preview pages and first look artwork, we've already spotted a few of those forms. The big one is Heat Blast, of course, because he's the iconic first transformation of Ben. Another confirmed alien is Overflow, and that's interesting because Overflow comes from the reboot era. His inclusion pretty much confirms that this series is pulling from all versions of Ben 10. This time, Ben won't be limited to just 1 or 2 forms. We're getting a proper lineup. What does the art and tone feel like? From the preview pages we've seen, the first thing that stands out is the art by Robert Carey. It's more detailed and slightly grittier than the original cartoon, but not in a way that makes it dark or grim. It's more like this modern superhero comic energy, but blended with an all-ages adventure vibe that Ben 10 needs. The artwork is cleaner but more defined, faces have more detail, and expressions feel a bit more nuanced. But they still have that exaggerated, expressive quality that makes Ben 10 so much fun. This time, the art is leaning more towards the sci-fi angle. There's a lot of emphasis on glowing tech, alien environments, and energy-based visuals. The artwork is supposed to feel like the world is bigger and more dangerous than before. Ben still looks like a kid. Gwen still has that expressive, slightly sarcastic energy in her design. Their body language, their reactions, it all keeps that sense of humor alive. Ben and Gwen feel a bit more modern, with subtle changes to their clothing and posture. It's more like they've been updated for today's generation. How new reader friendly is this if you've never watched Ben 10? Even if you've never seen a single episode of the original Ben 10 or Alien Force, you won't have trouble understanding what's going on in this comic. The first arc basically reintroduces the entire premise in a modern, streamlined way. Ben Tennyson finds an alien device called the Omnitrix, which lets him transform into different alien forms. Man of Action is pulling from all past versions of Ben 10 and reshaping them into a single modern continuity. At the same time, if you're a long-time fan, you'll find familiar characters and familiar aliens. The opening storyline of the comic is supposed to play out like a modern origin miniseries. It'll introduce the characters, build the world, establish the stakes, and then, once that foundation's in place, the book rolls forward into ongoing adventures. And because the series is planned as a monthly ongoing one, there's room to expand the mythos over time. What can we expect from future arcs after issue number 1? If issue number 1 is an origin story, then what can we expect from later issues? The good news is that this series isn't slowing down after the origin. The opening arc, led by Joe Casey, is designed to establish the world, Ben, the Omnitrix, and the larger stakes, but once that foundation is set, the comic will shift into a rhythm of short, self-contained story arcs. And we really like this approach, because instead of one long storyline, you get tighter, more focused narratives that each explore a different aspect of the Ben 10 universe while still contributing to a bigger picture. What makes this even more interesting is how Man of Action will be actively rotating scripting duties. Casey is kicking things off, but future arcs will see other members like Joe Kelly, Duncan Rouleau, and Stephen T. Siegel step in to write the story. And that's where things have the potential to get really fun, because each of them brings a slightly different voice and storytelling style. So, while the continuity stays consistent, the tone can shift depending on who's writing. Maybe one arc will lean more into humor and character dynamics, while another can dive deeper into sci-fi concepts or darker, more intense conflicts. This seems like a refreshing approach because it'll keep the series from feeling monotonous or stale. At the same time, all of these arcs are meant to build towards something larger. The creators have made it clear that this isn't just a collection of random adventures, it's a gradual expansion of the mythology. That means exploring the Omnitrix in more detail, how it works, where it comes from, and what it really means in the larger universe, as well as diving into the cultures and worlds of the different alien species Ben transforms into. What's the deal with all those variant covers? If you're a comic collector, you probably already know issue number 1 is where publishers go all out. And in this case, Dynamite Entertainment is treating Ben 10 number 1 like a full-on collectible event. Alongside the main cover, there's a whole lineup of variant covers from some seriously talented artists. You've got people like Robert Carey, Duncan Rouleau, Dustin Nguyen, Sebastian Perez, and Eric Canetti all contributing their own take on Ben 10. Carey is already defining the look of the interior pages, so his cover likely reflects the tone of the actual story. Then you've got Rouleau, one of the original creators, bringing that authentic legacy feel. And artists like Dustin Nguyen and Eric Canetti are bringing a more modern, stylized edge that collectors love. But it doesn't just stop at picking your favorite cover. They're also doing a blind bag program where certain copies of the comic will be sealed, and you won't know which variant cover you're getting until you open it. And yeah, we can already see collectors going all in on this because it adds that element of surprise. You might get a common variant, or you might pull something rare. Then, there's the Black Authentics cover, which is a very specific kind of collector bait. This version comes with a completely blank cover designed for sketches and signatures. So if you're someone who goes to conventions, this is basically a canvas. You can get an artist to draw Ben, your favorite alien, or maybe even a completely custom piece right on the cover. This is being positioned as a major number 1 issue, the kind people might want to hold on to, collect multiple versions of, or even get signed down the line. And yeah, if everything we've talked about actually comes together the way it's being set up, this might end up being one of the most interesting reinventions Ben 10 has ever had. It's a version of Ben that's trying to evolve, lean into bigger stakes, deeper sci-fi ideas, and a world that feels more unpredictable, darker, and dangerous. Whether you've been watching Ben since day one or you're walking into this universe for the first time, we're sure you're going to love it. Let us know in the comments if you're excited for this darker, absolute version of Ben 10, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, because it really helps us make this sort of content. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.